Hey guys, welcome back to the Power Up Project. So we had a little computer glitch and we're practicing what we preach here. So we're going for good over seeking perfection here. But I want to welcome you to this episode with a very special guest, Phil Franks. Phil is the co-founder of Allen Key, amazing human. He is transforming lives in the corporate world. Professional athletes, he and his wife Krista have started this amazing company that is helping people unlock their potential through strategic planning and figuring out how to see the good in their lives by gathering the data that will make their lives better, not only for themselves, but their team. So tune in, check it out. Can't wait to hear what you think. Leave some comments. Make sure you follow Phil. He also is the host of the Unlock podcast, and all of that you'll find in the descriptions below. Enjoy. All right, guys, I am so excited to welcome this guy sitting next to me to this show. This is my good buddy, Phil. What's up, Phil?
Hey, man.
Great to see you.
Thanks for having me, brother.
So on the Power Up Project, what we define a Power Up as, and I know I've told you before, but we're going to pretend that you don't know this. A Power Up is to turn your attention to your intention. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to hit you right out of the gate with a pretty good one. So let's pretend that you had a time machine. You can go back any point in your life. And at that point in time, you need to give yourself a power up. What would you say to yourself and why, and when would it be?
You know, the moment that's coming to me is a moment that I share, and I've shared this with you, but is one of the biggest transformative moments in my life was when I had to make a choice. And I think it was the choice of jumping into the version that I wanted to be versus the version that I was living. To paint a picture for people that are listening, 12 years ago, rewind 12 years, partnered at an organization, a digital agency, mobile apps, large global clients, traveling the world, growing team, people, leading multiple facets of that business, all the while not having a really big personal practice, never going in, not even knowing what the word intention was at that point in my life, and being given the gift and the opportunity to welcome life into the world. My eldest son, who's now 5.5, Oren, who started school this week, was yet to join us. And that, what I believe is that energy of life coming into my world with my wife was an opportunity to change. And the thing that I felt, without going into too much detail about the specifics of that experience and when I needed a power up, was I felt in my body that what I was living wasn't the version that I was going to be living. And that's tension. There's a lot of tension there. And I didn't know how to explore it. I didn't know what it meant. But what I felt was I needed to change. And in that moment, if I could go back and give myself a power up moment, what I would say is trust the feeling. Trust the feeling. Trust what you know in your body, because that's going to know well before your mind does. And that moment, I needed a little nudge or a hug, pat on the back to say, hey, man, you can do this. And luckily in my world, I had that. I had my wife as a partner, guardian angel, all the things. She was really kind of like my safe space to land. And we began working on intention for how our lifestyle was going to be.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think that, in my experience too, I just realized that when we have those big moments, it feels like we're kind of over a fence, right? We just were talking about this before we started recording. Like you have your foot firmly planted in, I know this is what it's going to be like, but you can't help but kind of still have that that little pullback. And just curious, like what role does this play in when you're talking with people with what you do with Allen Key? Because you do amazing stuff where you're essentially pulling out what people can't see or they see in themselves, but they are maybe looking for that power up themselves. Like what is it, and how does your experience in that help you do your job?
Yeah, I love this question. And I'm going to start with kind of the framework. I think what I was realizing and beginning to discover in my life was this whole concept of awareness and self-awareness. And I believe that an intentional life is rooted in habitually going into yourself, asking tough questions, investigating the things you're going through and learning from those experiences, and then integrating that learning continuously. So habitually going in, continuously coming out. Habitually going in, continuously coming out. And that process was beginning at that moment that you just allowed me to share, was I was beginning to understand myself. And I was beginning to make decisions, not out of assumption, but out of design and knowing. What do I want? What do I feel? Now let's go make that happen.
Right.
And I think that relationship with awareness is really the biggest proponent of this work. Is we're trying to say, come in, become aware of yourself, and in many cases for the first time.
Right.
Because none of us are asking these questions. We're not taught how. We're taught how to go into the flow of life and do the things from the models that we found around us. And our work is really a safe space. It's a pause for you to, via the facilitation of us and the framework that we've created, come into that and inject yourself.
Right.
Inject yourself into knowing yourself more, and then see what happens from that.
And you find that like in that process of it, you're having people that are, timid to jump into that, like, where they're going like, man, dude, there's something there I don't want to like jump into. And, I like to tell people that everything you're running from is hidden behind your fears. And I know you and I have talked at length, I guess for people that don't know, Phil and I go on some hikes together, and we kind of have been each other's like ping ponging back and forth of all of this stuff,
Totally.
and it really is this thing of like, when you feel insecure or you feel, I think people think that there's something wrong with them. Right. Like, what's your thought about that? If I came to you and I said, hey man, like, I just don't think this is for me because, it scares me or whatever. Like, what is your usual response to people?
I think it's all data. I think it's all an indicator, right? And the experience of your emotions or these thoughts or anything is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to go in. The problem, and we've all dealt with this, myself included, and I still do, right? And I know I've shared this with you on many of those hikes, is you get caught in the cycle. You get caught in the loop, and you get caught in the experience of that feeling. You get caught in the experience of the stimuli from whatever you're going through in your life, and that becomes you. That becomes all that you are. And then that is manifested out in how you move forward from there. Rather than, and the words that I use and we use in our work, is becoming the observer. Become the observer of the experience and let it be data. Let it be something that teaches you and guides you to where you need to go.
Right.
So the fear is par for the course, right? Like, you're going to experience fear no matter what you do. If it's a job change, even if you're leveling up, so you get a promotion, there's going to be some fear there. Like, am I good enough? Can I do this? Am I going to be qualified? Can I support the people around me? All the questions that you start asking yourself with the little Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder. Right. But if you're able to participate in that experience by becoming the observer and use it as data, it can serve you too.
Right.
It'll guide you to where you need to go. And that's my belief, is that you use that stuff to your benefit by not becoming attached to it.
Yeah. I just want to add in there that this is for all the people that are out there that say that they're not creative. Like, he's just basically telling you could use your life as like a spreadsheet. So anybody out there that is avoiding like, well, I can't think creatively enough to dream big or whatever, that's total BS. Like, you can pull the data from it just like any other spreadsheet and figure out your life and things that you're struggling through. And, I think that for you, like, I'm just curious, like, what was the big moment that was like, that you needed to hear that yourself? And did you find that answer from the outside was one thing, but you felt the feeling? Like, what was it like to step into that world for the first time, knowing that you are basically saying, everybody can say what they want, but this is the feeling in here that I know I got to do?
Totally.
And I'm sure that you were met with people going like, good luck, man. Like, Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. In that same experience, that kind of epiphany moment that I had, I really call that kind of like my first download. Dare I say spiritual, I use the word universal, download that really kind of shocked the system when I wasn't really asking for it. And that led to a series of decisions, right? The feeling was there. It was very present in my gut. What then came from that was this idea and this tension of being a present father, being engaged in my son's life, my children's life. I was traveling around the country. I was on the fast track to be an absentee dad. They were going to know me on the weekends and maybe some dinners. And I didn't want that. And there was a wild tension between my heart and my mind when it came to, well, what are you going to do about that, right? Because that's what provokes fear, is I'm making a cushy salary. I've got healthcare. All these things that people worry about in the journey of change is not where they're going. Because I think a lot of us, if we allow ourselves to think about that, we know what we want. The hard part is, and this is a philosophy that I use in our work, after awareness, there's the canyon. And the canyon is actually building the rungs of the bridge to take the steps across from how you feel inside to the life that you live on the outside.
Right.
And the moment that I felt that tension, to answer your question, is really that career and that lifestyle I was living, could I be a present dad? And the answer in my heart of hearts was no.
Right.
Like it would have required much more from me than I was willing to give for the life that I wanted to build.
Right.
And in that transition, there was loss. I mean, there was loss of trust and friends and coworkers and things that I thought I liked and thought I wanted to do, then changed into other things. And that whole process is very scary too, when you're kind of shedding a proverbial skin.
Right.
And you're saying, I am choosing no longer to be this. And in that change, it becomes wildly hard before it becomes better.
Right.
And that moment was tenuous. I mean, I love my partners in that business to death. We're still very aligned now. But there was a period in that journey where I was kind of ostracized. I was ostracized from that group and kind of put on an island. And no disrespect to that experience on their part, because they were feeling things too. They were feeling like being let down and being at loss and losing somebody that had helped build this thing with them. And also things from people as close as family. Right. You know, they may not have said it verbally, but, you know, in hindsight, they've now communicated, we thought you were crazy. Yeah. You're about to have a child and you're going to leave a stable job and all of these things to start at ground zero. Right. I mean, on the same day my son was born, November 29th, my wife called me and she said, I'm going into labor. Will you come home? And that was the last day I had a job. And it was the day that I became a father, an entrepreneur, present dad, all these versions of myself at ground zero, right, all on the same day. Yeah. And so I think that moment, I lost a lot. Yeah. But in that loss, there was also tremendous gain.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to guess that in that loss, there were stories that you told yourself. And we all do this, right? We tell ourselves stories, but now knowing what you know and reflecting back, not reliving past, right? But we use it to gain our present moment, right? What part of those stories actually ever came true that were your biggest fears?
None,
right?
None.
And it's so funny how like we get hung up on other people's judgments, and we don't, as humans, realize that, just like you had mentioned, like your family doesn't know what's going in your head, your friends don't know what's going through your head. But I think a lot of times people are afraid to step into that world because of the loss part. Yeah. And they feel like that, well, this person is going to lose. So I kind of believe, and I'd love for you to kind of spitball on this too, is that if they aren't there now, were they really ever supposed to be there to begin with? And did they serve the point to be the catalyst for you to get to where you are now?
Love this position and question. And my philosophy on this has changed dramatically from then until now. What I believe, and this has been kind of how I've marched in my journey, is when you go in to yourself and begin to investigate and collect that data and spend time, like dedicated time with yourself, having conversations with your partner, or if you're alone, doing reflective exercises, finding modalities that allow you to elicit some of this muscle to become more aware of yourself and the life that you're living. The stimuli and the validation that you look on the outside dramatically goes down. It's kind of like an inverse correlation where the more that I become comfortable with me, the less I need that comfortability coming from the outside for me. Right. And so things become, I'm going to put air quotes here, easier to live because you are not necessarily dealing with that. I'm not saying it goes away completely. It's just that you've built a muscle after going through that so many times to allow yourself to rely on what you know and the work you've done in yourself. And ultimately, like I started, how you feel. Right. What feels right. And the flow, I want to close a loop that, from my last answer. I don't want people to think like this is I have a passion for X, and if I say that, it becomes true. And that's not what I'm saying. No. I'm not, and I want to debunk that by any means, even for the work that we're doing. This isn't a solve your problems with this program or this book or this offering that we have at Allen Key. It's an opportunity to become aware of yourself and continue to train in that way, continue to train in that space so that when you approach change and when you go through change, you're not doing things that are practical and sensible and strategic, using your mind, using the thing that this thing is really good at. Use your brain to put the pieces together, connect dots, move forward, take action.
Yeah.
But the flow is no longer from here down, where I'm kind of suppressing how I feel and letting this take over. It's from feel up.
Right.
And so I'm now using my brain strategically from the data that I've collected in my aware states to then put into practice and make moves to begin to build the puzzle that is this life of intention that I desire to live.
Yeah. Man, so many questions just popped up when you were saying that stuff. It's amazing because there's a couple things in there I want to kind of swing back and try to pull out, but there was a lot of good stuff. And I hope everybody maybe rewinds back and listens to that again. But I mean, I know that you work with people that are up at C-suite level down to people that are working in a job that they're trying to get to that point. From my experience, everything you just talked about is at the top level. And I think for whatever reason, these people that want to aspire to be higher up, or they want to be an entrepreneur, or they think that somehow that stuff is reserved for these people that they've figured out how to think up, right? How much do you find in working with some of these people that are the higher ups, right, that it's hard work that has got them there, but they really don't know who they are. And once they figure out who they are, then it's kind of like, oh God, like a rocket ship just got lit because they put in the hard work to know how to get there. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, what's the bridge between somebody that's aspiring to be versus somebody that's already there? You get what I'm saying, right?
I love where you're going. So what I'll start with is I ask a ton of questions, and that's kind of part of the work. And my wife is even better at it. Our facilitator is even better than myself and her. The questions that you ask are fairly simple. Things like that I'm completely blown away by, I get lacks of response to, or just unknowings, are questions like, what do you want? What do you desire? And when you're met with silence on that, or you're met with an answer that you can tell isn't really aligned with that person, it may be more of just an assumption. You start to realize like the lack of energy that many are putting into creating something from the place of knowing. And so to answer your question, what I see is that it's not getting anywhere. It's not getting to a place that anybody else is. It's not getting to the CEO seat. Because as we all know, I mean, these mega millionaires and celebrities that are all over the world, I mean, they're riddled with mental health issues and, systemic stuff that's going on in society in poverty, right? Like these things exist all across the board, and money is not the change agent for that.
Right.
It's or power or any of the allure that we follow. It's creating success for yourself and letting that be your spark. Letting that be the thing that lights you up and drives you and moves yourself, moves your energy, moves your actions, your thoughts, the steps you take physically every day, who you surround yourself with. It's from that place, right? So it's not even like a skill that you're trying to add, albeit, like I mentioned earlier, I think this is a muscle that you build. But when it comes to getting somewhere or getting somewhere someone else is, that's not the starting line. The starting line is defining success for you and letting that be your path, and then being okay with that path, and unwinding, unraveling from what you thought was success was.
Yeah. And the second part, to even add to what you were talking about before, is, when you started the evolution of where you're at now, and I'm sure that you deal with this and a lot of what you guys do with Allen Key is people don't realize how much of their stories have built through the years. And a lot of it, in my experience, and I'm curious to hear about yours, for me, it was rooted in learning how to actually love myself and learning how to forgive myself, because I thought I always had to be right. So allowing and acknowledging that I was wrong sometimes. Like, in your experience of your evolution, like how much of those conversations internally are either rooted back to a younger version of you, or like it's not, I think everybody's trying to solve the problem in the present, but they don't realize that it's actually all of the junk that we're hanging on to which you have to acknowledge is part of your life.
It still is.
It still is.
Yeah.
It's not going to go away, but how are you able to use all of that stuff to help you in this moment now?
Yeah.
Like how much of that would you say was either difficult or rooted in what you realized wasn't all the stories that you thought, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that is the work.
Right.
I think what you just said, and we've shared this before, is I don't think you're just you now. I think that you're actually every version of you that you've ever been, and that kind of autonomous programming that exists inside of you, you slowly become aware of. Oh, why do I feel money? Why do I have this relationship with money and scarcity? Oh, like look at how I grew up.
Right.
Or why do I have some of the problems that I have with my mental health? Oh, look how I grew up. Or why am I thriving? Like, oh, look how I grew up. And you see kind of that storied chain of events that happens, and you realize that some of those things are no longer of service. And much like this is going to kind of be a bold statement, but I think much like trauma, capital T, lowercase t, any type of trauma, whether you're left at school and your parents, missed you for 15 minutes, or you go all the way up to spectrum, as unfortunate as any of that stuff is, it's actually not that thing that is you. It's your relationship with that thing.
Right.
And I say that boldly because I know that as you go up and down the spectrum of experiencing life, as we all do, there's varying degrees of how difficult that is to relationship or unrelationship with. And I think our job is to do that investigation on ourselves so that we can turn the sphere and re-relationship with our experiences and discover new parts of ourselves that we didn't know. For me, I always had one that was scarcity of trust and love, and allowing that stuff to come through, because I felt like as a child I always kind of had to put my dukes up, not because of abuse or because of anything like that. I came from a very loving home, 2 supportive parents, but because my physical environment always changed on me. I moved around a ton when I was a kid, and looking back at that and investigating that as I got older, I realized, wow, like a lot of my actions are rooted in this kind of core protection mechanism, because I don't know if this environment's going to all of a sudden go away.
Right.
And I have to kind of protect myself in that cocoon again to rebuild. And that kind of investigation is true of anything that you experience. And the awareness that I've gained from going back and re-relationship with versions of myself led me to realize the question that you ask is that a lot of it is that. It's built from that. It's built from those experiences from as early as coming out of the womb till the conversation you had 20 minutes ago.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's what is great about what the work you guys do. It's I know you and I very much share this idea of like we're not gurus, like this in more guides, I think is what it is. And I think that, to anybody listening out there, like, it's this idea that I think we all look for answers to something that is already there. And it's looking for people like Phil, like myself, they're everywhere, that have gone through the whatever it is for you, like you said, small t, little t, right? We've all got it, but have learned how to adjust to the present moment. And in your work, I would love for you to talk a little bit about Allen Key. Like the logo kicks ass. I love the logo. But 2, like how you formed it with your wife. And I think that how that dynamic works, as far as a business partner being somebody you live with, totally. And how that has worked with shaping all the stuff.
Yeah. And I get this question a lot, actually. And a lot of people look at the situation with me and they're like, man, how do you work with your significant other? How do you work with your wife? And how do you separate work and being together? And or how do you spend so much time with your kids? Like we've employed very present parenthood where we're there and it's her and I splitting, and then family's obviously engaged in some capacity. But that was by design, based on the data and investigation and that success criteria that we set up. And we found in that investigation going back that actually some of the hardest points in our relationship were when we weren't working together. Because we started our relationship at work and we kind of formed a friendship at work and found this chemistry in working with one another that was mixed with what we were doing in life, but then also what we were doing on the work front in our careers. And it just carried over. But I want to ask the audience kind of a really simple question. It's like, if you're sharing life with someone, there's this huge void with, especially in partnership, where maybe somebody goes one way and somebody goes another. And I'm not prescribing that everybody should work together. That's by no means what I'm prescribing. What I'm saying is that like the connective tissue of work, which is a really big driver in many of our lives, as it should be, it's purposeful contribution, service, etc. Sharing that in some way with your partner, whether it's as intimate as with me, where we're talking about that almost constantly as it's interwoven into our lifestyle, it's completely integrated.
Right.
This whole separation of like work and life doesn't actually exist for us. Our work is our life. What we preach is what we practice and how we live. And I found tremendous harmony in that, tremendous alignment in being able to say, how I live is what I do. And the product is my lifestyle, and continuing to learn about myself and share that with others. And to your point, like there's no gurus here.
Right.
Like it's actually space for you to become your own guru.
Right.
And for you to become your own empowered champion, to give yourself the power ups.
Right.
So my wife and I have found a really good chemistry in not only our partnership and how we share a relationship in husband and wifehood, but also in co-founders of a business and raising family and being contributors to our community, our family, and the circles beyond that. It's easier. It's easier for me because that question I was going to ask is, why wouldn't you want to share that much with the person you love?
Right.
Why wouldn't you want to share that much time and space and energy where you're both directing your both full-powered energies into the lifestyle that you want to live and making that be the nucleus? I use like the cell a lot to talk about lifestyle. And I think about the cell like you focus on the nucleus and build out. Like the membrane supports the nucleus and all these things, and it's like not the other way around. So your family, in our case, my family, my lifestyle, the success criteria, spending time with my kids, doing work that I love, being physically well, all the things that are part of my success and my intentional lifestyle is a nucleus. And then everything else serves that.
Right.
Every decision we make serves to make sure that nucleus is served.
Right.
And if there are things that are in question that challenge that, we work together.
Right.
And we say, is this something that we want to do? What kinds of things are going to happen in this case? And you don't know all the answers, but you feel.
Right.
And we've turned down clients. We've said no to people. We've done things like left significant financial gain behind
Right.
in order to live this life from the nucleus, from the inside out, rather than the outside in.
Yeah. And I think that the part I really want people to understand in that is that you can design the life that you want. And I think for so many of us, and a lot of what the whole intention of the Power Up is that if you want to change, put your attention there in towards your intention, and then provide yourself, like you're saying, with the roadmap, the cells, a healthy cell divides and makes more cells. Like it brings those things into our being. And, in kind of wrapping all this up here, because we got you on a timeline, man, you got lives to change and impact to make. You got a book out, which is awesome. And the design, I mean, I'm telling you guys, like, if you want just like a cool looking book to set on your table, like you got to check out Phil's stuff. The guy's like a crazy good designer. So maybe I'm just a design nerd and I love that stuff.
We share that too, right?
But can you give us a little book summary so people can find it, like where to find you, like how to get in touch with you, which obviously will all be in the show notes as well. But just kind of want people to really kind of know what Allen Key is about and like the change that they can bring. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Love it.
Yeah.
If you're looking for the book and you want to explore this on your own, I mean, Amazon's a great place to find that. It's on Amazon. Strategic Planning for Life is the name of the book. You can search for us as authors. Krista and Phil Franks were co-authors on the book. And that's out there because like our mission is to take these frameworks that we've created from the modalities that we've engaged with and the things that have helped us over our change over the last decade plus and share that with as many people as we can. I want more people, like, I got to tell you, Jason, did a lot of work in the past, did a lot of work on big projects, big budgets, big brands, things that especially designers and people in the creative space really would kind of staple their career on. And all of that stuff was great and I learned a ton. And it served people in some way. But the moment that we get to see people have that kind of fire spark in their eyes and you can feel energetically someone changing their belief in themselves or seeing their lifestyle different from a place of knowing rather than assumption and obligation, that is a special moment.
Yeah.
And we want more people to experience that. So the book is a great place to start if you're wanting to do it on your own. It's low cost, it's low, easy access. You'll get it in a few days on Amazon. And then we do work with organizations and people one-on-one. So we do work with people, you mentioned professional athletes, like people in transition have found us, athletes coming from the field to career or life. It's been a great foundational tool and modality for them to use in that transition. People who are in the middle of change, who maybe have all the box checked, and they've got the healthy kids, they've got the loving partner, they've got a home, a career that they've climbed the corporate ladder, and that feeling of, well, I've got all the things, why am I not happy?
Right.
That question gets brought up a lot, and as people enter this work as a foundation to begin to explore what's next. So we work with people one-on-one. The site, you can go and explore that one-on-one experience as well. But the cornerstone that we're really hanging our hats on currently is working with organizations, because the corporate world has an amazing reach on people. You've got big ponds of folks who are doing great work in their organizations. And mental well-being, holistic well-being in the corporate space, wellness in general, is still a topic that many are trying to figure out, well, how do you actually do this in practice, in the flow of work, to make sure that the incentives align with the organization and the individual. And we believe that when the individual growth happens, company growth happens. Mm-hmm. And so when someone does this in the confines of work with coworkers and unlocks all these amazing things about their journey, you can only imagine what happens when they go home to their kids.
Right.
And then they come back to their team and they contribute to a project. It's all connected.
Right.
And that's our thesis, is that when someone becomes well, their contribution goes through the roof. And so we focus with Fortune 500 companies. Mattel Toys is a big one of ours right now. Childhood dream, Hot Wheels guy growing up. Get to work with the company that made him, and others. But it's just a fun experience for people to have in the corporate world too.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to, just personally, and to everybody else out there, going to put this out there so it's forever. I just want to celebrate what you guys are doing. You and I met through the gym and quickly just clicked right away. I think we have a very shared vision for the world to leave an impact and have an impact, and more importantly, a legacy behind. So, I want people to understand that guys like Phil are in your life already. What you have to be willing to do is be open to seeing them. And one of the things I really want you to pay attention to what Phil talked about was that, you notice he didn't say in the corporate setting, we fix the team. He's talking about fixing individuals. So if there's something off in your life, fix it. Check it out. Unlock it. Like he's talking about. Speaking of unlocked, he's got a great podcast. Check it out too. We'll put the link in the bio as well. But understand that you have this ability to change. And I just want to thank you for what you've brought into my life and that ability to put a mirror up to myself and to give me at times where maybe I couldn't find the answer. You have been the kind of friend that will throw back something at me. And I just want to thank you for being in the world with me, man. And it's really been great to get to know you. And guys, I just want to encourage you to, if you've gotten any information out of this, make sure you're liking and subscribing to the Power Up Project. Make sure you're heading over to Phil's stuff, check it out, get his book, read it, learn it, apply it, understand that you actually have the power to do this, and that it all lies with us, and we can unlock so many mad, crazy, good things in our life just by showing up for yourself and loving yourself to do enough to do the tough stuff. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for holding the space and this conversation. I hope it reaches one person, because that's all we need.
That's all the goal, right?
One person.
That's right.
Thanks for
all right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Cool.
That's great, man.
Foxland Media. Think big.